G'day. Talking today about a news report from a few days back about a man found lost in a southern German forest. Now, it turned out he was a local, roughly speaking, but he'd gotten lost in the forest. He was also stark naked and very confused. Now, why should anybody be wandering around stark naked in a southern German forest? It really isn't that warm at this time of year in any case. And why should they be completely confused and wandering around lost? And he told people who found him that he was a monk, which has nothing to do with it, of course, but it does add a tiny weird note to it all, who had been wandering in the forest and had eaten bad berries, so called. And therefore he had suffered from hallucinations and been found wandering lost, naked and very confused. Why should that be the case? I asked a German botanist about this, and we came to the conclusion that only one candidate really comes into question for this, and that is deadly nightshade. Deadly nightshade is called Tollkirschen in German, and the toll part of this means basically madness, while Kirschen can mean berries or cherries. It's used for cherries and for berries occasionally. So the whole compound word, Tollkirschen, means madness berries, which is a better description than the English description of deadly nightshade, because it isn't that deadly, although it is very dangerous for children or for anybody of a low body weight. There are three chemicals in deadly nightshade. One of them is scopolamine, the so-called truth drug, which is useless as a truth drug because all it does is make people uninhibited, woozy, soporific, if they're going to blab, which is not necessarily the case, because if they've got training and strength of mind, maybe they'll be able to resist the influence. If they're going to blab, they'll probably blab to anything you really suggest to them, or that you want them to blab to. They'll confess to anything. It's useless for actually getting to the truth. And I'll point to a blog post on the history of that usage in the USA, down below, underneath this video. But the main drug responsible, even though all three drugs inside deadly nightshade can have this effect that we saw in this case of the lost wandering man, main drug responsible is atropine, the one most present and the one usually responsible for these symptoms, these effects. Deadly nightshade belongs to the Atropine family of plants, and the name Atropine for that family of plants and atropine, the chemical, both come from Atropos, the senior of the three Greek mythical fates who had snipped the threads of men's souls. And these effects are quite fascinating. They can be summed up in a medical mnemonic, a memory aid, which goes something like, if I can ever remember it, hot as a hare, the rabbit-like animal, the hare with long ears, meaning that the person is very warm to the touch, as though they have a mild fever. Dry as a bone, because their throat dries up, their eyes dry up, these secretions dry up, and they go very, very dry in their throat. Red as a beet, so they go quite red in the face often. Mad as a hatter, because they're completely off their heads. For example, I once heard of a case where a man had eaten leaves from a datura plant which had been fed to him in his salad. He'd been poisoned by somebody else. And Datura is a vaguely related group of plants which also contain often the same three chemicals. And he had gone off his head, he had wandered around somewhat confusedly, he'd stripped off completely, and he dived into the nearest pond of water to cool off because he felt too hot. Atropine and the other two drugs will interfere with the body regulation of temperature, which all happens a bit back there in the brain at the back. And you'll feel much hotter than you actually are. And people will quite often strip off underneath the influence just to cool off and dive into water. He also complained about being surrounded by little blue devils with pitchforks who were poking him with their pitchforks. In other words, he was hallucinating badly, and not in a pleasant way. This is a very similar case. So getting back to the poor man who was found lost, wandering, naked and very confused, you can see what happened. Atropine, the other two drugs, had these effects on him that he basically went a bit batty for a while. He felt far too hot, so he stripped off, and he wandered around very confused and lost until people found him. Atropine is very useful as a medicine. It's been known for a very long time from the plants, from deadly nightshade and similar plants. The ancient Greeks used it as medicine because it's useful in helping relieve pain. It's not a brilliant pain relief, but together with other medicines it can help relieve pain to some degree. It also relieves other symptoms, and it can be very useful for all sorts of things. So for example, the US Army in the first Iraqi war issued injections filled with atropine and a couple of other drugs in case troops were ever attacked with nerve gas. Atropine will block the actions of nerve gas for a while. It's a fascinating chemical all by itself and is still very much used today in medicine. For example, I have here atropine tablets at 0.5 milligrams each in a tiny, tiny white tablet. That is 0.5 milligrams of atropine. It would, I guess, take about 4 of these of 10 pills each, 0.5 milligrams, to really incapacitate somebody like me of my body weight. It wouldn't be pleasant. The side effects already kick in after 1 milligram of atropine, and they're not pleasant side effects, really. Incapacitation occurs, roughly speaking, about 20 milligrams of, no, sorry, yes, about 20 to 40 milligrams. It was even used in psychiatry at one stage to induce a coma, a very limited coma, of a couple of days' length in psychiatric patients in an effort to relieve symptoms of their mental illness. But like most other coma-inducing drugs of any kind, the effects would wear off after a fairly short while. It wasn't all that useful for that at all. However, it is a fascinating chemical by itself, and later on we'll explore the effects on the nervous system and why it has the effects, why it has these symptoms. In the meantime, really, don't eat deadly nightshade. You won't like it, it's not good for you. You seriously won't like the effects. And if you do take far too much, it's not a pleasant way to die either. Very, very unpleasant. So don't do that either. And many thanks for listening. Bye.